Suicidal offenders. I promised you when we talked in the jails unit that we would revisit this issue. So here we are. Suicide is more likely to occur in a correctional setting than any other. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen here. It could be the fact that most people who wind up in prisons and jails, think about this, most people who wind up in prisons and jails are generally self-destructive anyway. And they engage in a lot of risk-taking behavior. I mean, this kind of describes our correctional population, the kind of people that commit crimes. So we could say they're predisposed to it anyway, maybe. And then there is the correctional environment itself. Maybe they weren't predisposed to it, but they get into prison, or they get into jail and they go, oh my God, this is really bad. They hear that door go clang behind them. And especially if they've gotten a long sentence, they go, and I have to live like this the rest of my life? And correctional facilities are not nice places. And sometimes I get frustrated with the general population that says, well, they have TV and they have a recreation yard, and they have this and they have them, we give them good food and all of that, we're treating them, we're coddling them. No, prisons and jails are really bad places. You don't want to go there unless you're going to work on the other side of the bars and make good money. Suicides often occur early during incarceration. It's a general rule of thumb. I mean, that's not to say that you don't have your outliers, and it might happen later on, but most of the time, more than 50%, most of the time, it's early. So in a jail, it's usually that first 24 hours. So when somebody's first arrested, we take their belt, we take their shoelaces, we take their hoodie strings, we take whatever they've got that they could possibly hurt themselves with. And sometimes even then, they still find a way to do it. In prisons, it occurs in intake and quarantine. Right? They've gotten down to the big prison, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, it's pretty overwhelming. And then the idea that this is going to be your life for how long? 5, 10, 15 years, life, whatever. And for some people, it's just too much. Sometimes it's fear. Like the fear of the unknown, the fear of what's going to happen. And in jails, of course, pretty much everybody that gets arrested in jails is drunk or high, which means they're not thinking about things very clearly anyway. And it makes them a little bit more predisposed to, oh my God, I'm in jail. So shame and humiliation. We get more of that in jails than in prisons. They're drunk, they're high, maybe you got a pillar of the community, a doctor, an elementary school teacher, somebody that people look up to, and they've been maybe arrested for drunk driving. And oh my God, what are my patients going to say? Oh my God, what are my students going to say? And they can't bear the thought of the shame and humiliation, so they hang it up. Remorse for the crime. They feel horrible about what they've done. True story. This happened a number of years back. A Delta College criminal justice student, he wasn't one of mine, but he was one of ours, was driving at a very high rate of speed, coming into Bay City on Midland Road. So he's coming from the country, from the township, into the city on Midland Road. And it's about, 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And at that point in time, he's Midland Road and Euclid Avenue has a stoplight. But at that hour of the morning, Euclid Avenue has a flashing yellow, and Midland has a flashing red. So he was supposed to stop, but he didn't. In fact, he blows through that red light at about 100 miles an hour. He had one of these souped-up muscle cars that he and his dad had helped to rebuild. 100 miles an hour, and I mean, the odds are pretty good that he should be able to go, through that intersection at that split second in time and not encounter any problems. I mean, really, Seriously, what are the odds? Astronomical, right? That somebody else is at exactly that point in time and space in what, the 2 seconds that it takes to go through that intersection at that rate of speed? But somebody was there. A CMU business student on a motorcycle. So 100-mile-an-hour muscle car, motorcycle, I think we know who lost that one. So the motorcyclist, who was at that point in time actually drunk, is splattered all over about 2 blocks. Pieces and parts of motorcycle and student all over the place. It was so bad, they actually had to bring in a fire truck to hose down the area. And they scooped up what was left with shovels and shoveled it into the body bag. That's how bad it was. So now here's this criminal justice student, right? Why do we go into criminal justice? Because we're all a bunch of freaking Pollyannas and we want to save the world. We want to help people, right? And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. So here you got a criminal justice student who wants to save the world, who wants to help people. And what's he just gone and done? 1, he's just killed somebody. And 2, he has just ended his criminal justice career. Do you think we put that man on suicide watch? Oh, yes, we did. We did not pass go. We did not collect $200. He went straight, directly to a suicide watch. Because who would blame him, right? Who would blame him? Personal crisis. Oh, my freaking God. If I had a nickel for everybody that I ever booked coming from some personal crisis, a funeral, right? The death of a loved one is probably one of the most common. That's not something that any of us cope very well with if you've ever experienced it. It's tough. And a lot of people, you know, there's usually alcohol at the funeral wake afterwards. And, you know, you're hurting inside, so you're going to kind of try to kill that pain. So you go glug, 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 which is all fine and well, as long as you don't get behind the wheel of a car. But some people do. And then the next thing you know, they're being pulled over for drunk driving. So life isn't shitty enough already. They've just lost somebody that's really important to them. Now they've just been arrested for drunk driving. Well, screw this. Right? Or somebody that's just got the divorce papers dropped on them. Or somebody that's just been dumped. People are in a crisis already. They react inappropriately, right? So the girl that gets dumped takes a baseball bat to the boyfriend's car. Now she just committed malicious destruction of property over 100, a felony. See how this goes? If I had a nickel for all the people that I booked like this coming from a personal crisis, I could have retired 10 years ago. It's common. So personal crisis, arrest, you know, why live? Sexual assault. More often in prison than jail, but the person was actually sexually assaulted. And they're like any other rape victim. And you know what? Most rape victims report this, that they want to die. Well, it's certainly not any different for somebody that's raped in a prison. Right? They become depressed, they want to die, and sometimes they take care of business. All suicide attempts, no matter how stupid they look, and you will see some stupid ones. You go, what is this guy thinking? There's no way he can die from that. No matter how stupid they look, you got to take them seriously. Because first off, it might really be for real and they just don't know how to go about it very well yet. They'll figure it out though. It might be for real. They really might be intending to kill themselves. They just haven't figured out how to do it right. You don't know. We had a guy, they brought him in one night, drunk, high, I don't know what he was, but he was in one of our detox cells and just crying. Crying is not the actual, that's not a good word. Bellowing like a bull moose in heat is probably a better description of the sound. Because if you go, ah! Ah! This went on for a while, and then all of a sudden we hear, ah! We hear the toilet flush, and we hear blub, 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 blub. Ah! Flush, blub, 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 blub. What the hell? So we come out of the control room, see what's going on. Well, this ding-dong has gone and inverted himself headfirst in the toilet. He's upside down in the toilet. And he's trying to drown himself by flushing the toilet, which is actually not doing the job. If he'd just put his face in the toilet water, he'd have been cool. But because he's flushing it, you know, he's clearing the toilet. I'm like, oh my God. So, we got to go turn his water off, and every 2 hours we got to check with him and turn his water back on for a few minutes and make sure that he's hydrated and all of that. But I'm like, really? My favorite, though, I was working midnights up in the jail. We're making rounds, and you're shining your flashlight in the cells to make sure that everybody's there and they're breathing. And we got this kid. He's got a sheet tied around his neck, okay? He's got the loose end in his hand, and he's doing this number here. So I looked at my partner. He looks at me like, open the door. What are you doing? Well, I'm trying to kill myself. Okay, he's articulated the desire to kill himself. I'm trying to kill myself, but I can't find any place to hang from because there isn't, right? They're hang-proof cells. Sarge, we got one coming down. And bring him down, put him on a suicide watch. It might be for real. You don't know. Right? As soon as they say, I want to die, I'm trying to kill myself, it doesn't matter how stupid, whatever they're doing looks, it might be for real. Or, you get this. People aren't intending to kill themselves. What they want is attention. They want to manipulate or gain attention, and they have an oops. Oops. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. And that happens. We had a guy who got one of those, it wasn't exactly a Dear John letter, but he got a letter from a friend telling him that his best friend outside in the free world was seen riding around in a convertible with the inmate's girlfriend in a bikini all over town. So he gets upset. Well, I'll show her. So he goes into the shower. He smashes the face shaver razor, one of those little teeny razor blades, and slashes the hell out of his arm. Now, fortunately, he went back and forth. So the pressure of the tissue will actually close the wound and staunch the bleeding considerably as opposed to going down the artery. So he does that, but it doesn't take a lot of blood to look scary. And he's in the shower, so you add blood to water and it goes a lot further. And so, the whole shower is turned red and he freaks out. So he grabs a towel, winds it around, runs back into his cell. Well, now the blood's coming through the towel. And he gets freaky. So he grabs a sheet and winds that around, and the blood keeps seeping through the sheet. So finally he freaks out totally, hits the panic alarm, and we come down there and, find what we find and take him off to the hospital and get him stitched up. Now, could he have died that way? Sure, eventually, especially if he just stayed in the shower. It just takes a lot longer when you go back and forth instead of, down the artery. But, people do stuff like that. And it has happened, somebody doesn't mean to kill themselves, but they have an oops. If you come across a suicide or suicide attempt, stop. Do not run into that cell. That's going to be your first inclination, Pollyannas. You want to save the world, you want to help people. Oh my God, there's a guy hanging. Oh my God, there's a guy bleeding, and you want to run in and save the world. Don't do it. Stop right now. Report it first. Because if you don't report it, medical isn't coming, and it does absolutely no good for you to go into that cell. You got to get EMS, right? You got to get EMS en route. So report it, and then wait for backup. Wait for backup. Once your backup arrives, then you assist. You do not go into that cell until you have backup. Report it, get backup, now you can go in. Because, first off, again, EMS needs to be en route. And if you don't call the help ain't coming. So it does you no good whatsoever to run in there and try to help somebody without EMS being en route. Secondly, suicide attempts may be a ruse for an escape or a hostage taking. Wow, you go running in there to help them out, and they jump on you and grab your keys. So maybe that hanging is a staged hanging, and they actually have a harness to take most of the weight off of their neck, and it just looks like they're hanging. Or that slashed wrist. A little bit of blood looks scary. Mix it with water, it looks even scarier. And a human being can lose quite a lot of blood, a couple of pints, before their health is really in any real jeopardy. So, you take a little blood and you smear it around, it looks awful. You go running in there to save the world, and bingo, they got you. You don't know. You don't know this, okay? Now I'm going to tell you, the golden rule of corrections and law enforcement is at the end of the shift, you go home. That is the golden rule. You go home. So you might be sitting here saying, well, if I wait for backup, okay, you know, I called, they've got EMS coming, I'm going to go in and help, because if I wait for backup, the guy could die. That's true. You know, in the 30 seconds or a minute or however long it takes for your backup to get there, that is true. That person could die. But you don't know that that's not an escape attempt or a ruse for a hostage taking. You don't know that. So you wait for your backup. If that person happens to expire, don't lose any sleep over it. Don't beat yourself up. I don't want to sound cold here, but this is the way it is, folks. That person made some choices. First, they chose to commit crime. And that's what got them here in the first place. Now they've chosen to do whatever it is they've done, you know, in an attempt to kill themselves. That was their choice, not yours. So if they expire while you're waiting for backup so that you can go home at the end of the day, oh well. Sorry. But, you know, they made some choices. Don't lose any sleep over it. Don't beat yourself up. You go home at the end of the day. If you don't understand that clearly right now, that you need to go home at the end of the day, and you're going to jeopardize your life or somebody else's by rushing in without waiting for backup, you need to change your major. I'm going to tell you straight up right now. I don't want you coming into our field because you're going to get somebody, yourself or somebody else, hurt or killed. And we don't need that. Change your major. Understand that the most important person right now is you, and that you go home. Does that make sense?